Thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So today's conversation, like so many of these, is deeply personal to me. I first met Therese through a frontline fundraising bootcamp with Academic Impressions. What began as professional development turned into something much more formative. After the training ended, we continued with one-on-one coaching. We talked about fundraising, yes, but also strategy, relationships, institutional culture. But we also talked about leadership, resilience, identity, and the questions that surface when you step into greater responsibility. I'm going to interrupt my own introduction and say I vividly remember stepping into this role and saying, oh, I need help, and reaching back out to Therese and resuming that conversation. So when I transitioned into a director role in the Office of Alumni Relations, Therese became something every emerging leader hopes to find and rarely does, a mentor outside the walls of my institution. She had legitimate professional credibility in my field, deep experience in university advancement, alumni engagement, and leadership development, but she wasn't embedded in my immediate environment. The distance created something invaluable for me, which was safety. Therese gave me space to test ideas, space to name fears, space to hold ambition without apology. And in that space, I was always met with thoughtfulness, wisdom, insight, and encouragement. Therese brings more than encouragement, she brings substance. She's a higher education leader with decades of experience spanning student affairs, enrollment management, university advancement, and human resources. She has served as a consultant with Academic Impressions, partnering with institutions like NYU, Auburn, and the University of Colorado system. She previously led alumni engagement initiatives at Colorado State University and has directed multi-million-dollar federal grant programs. Today, she's the founder of the Athena Institute, where she designs and facilitates leadership development programs centered on inclusive leadership, trust, motivation, coaching for performance, and building resilient team cultures. Her work blends systems thinking with strength-based philosophy, and it's deeply human. So I'm so grateful for you. I'm honored to welcome you to Real Talk. Thank you for being here. Happy Friday.
I'm so happy to be here. And you were just such a pleasure to have conversations with that. I'm happy to have another one.
I love that. So we're going to jump right in. So you've led in student affairs, advancement, enrollment, and now executive leadership development. When you look back across those chapters, how has your understanding of mentorship evolved?
I think to have a really positive experience with mentoring, you really have to know what your needs are. You really have to know what you need out of that relationship. And I think that's the whole premise behind it is, what do you need now and how can someone help you with that? And I know I read one article I really loved that talks about you should kind of have a board of directors as mentors, because you might need different things from different people at different times. And one person might not serve that need. And so I think that's a cool concept to consider too, if you're looking for, how can I bounce some things off of someone who has some experience I don't have yet? Or who do I just trust to share something that's really difficult that I'm going through and to get their perspective on it? I mean, I think, if you have a circle of people you can do that with, that can be really powerful.
I love that concept because I think it does two different things. It ensures that you understand this can be more than one person. There doesn't just have to be this one person who can solve all of your life problems. And at the same time, like, I think of a board of directors as, in my professional contexts, these are people who understand the mission and are here to help. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily doing the same thing you're doing, or that even their expertise is even tied to what you're doing. And that doesn't make it less valuable.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think sometimes we're looking for people's qualities too. Does the person have integrity? Are they benevolent? Do they care about the good of the good of everyone versus the good of one person themselves? I think we look for people too that have just certain qualities that we gravitate to because they're quality human beings, and we want to learn to be that ourselves. And so we go to people who have that kind of quality about them.
I love that. You've mentored leaders at many stages, emerging supervisors, senior administrators, founders. What have you found that seasoned professionals misunderstand about what younger employees, leaders, future leaders, teammates really need?
I think the biggest misconception is when you reach a certain level, you think you can't grow anymore. And that's the frustration I see sometimes with people. They reach a certain pinnacle in their career and they're like, I've got it all figured out. And I don't think any of us ever have it all figured out. And what I appreciate about coaching people who are more new to their particular profession is they know they've got things to learn. They're excited to learn. They want to take in everything they can. Where people who are in more senior leadership roles, sometimes it's more about, well, I know that. I've got that figured out. Now, that's not everyone. There's definitely folks out there who are really committed to their own personal and professional growth. But I think that's what I appreciate about really coaching people who are mid-level to just entering fields, is because they really get that you can still grow and you can still develop.
This is not one of my prepared questions, but I had somebody reach out to me this week and ask about managing up. And so
Mm.
I think a question I would ask you that kind of dovetails off your last answer is, what is your advice to somebody in a role with a supervisor where they're trying to navigate this, like, oh, I know it all, I've got it figured out, we know how we do this? What is the advice you'd share there?
I think for one, to understand how you can best communicate with that person, there's 4 different styles of communicating. And so one's functional, where that you're very detail oriented. One is relationship oriented or personal, and that's where you like the connection. One is analytical, where you're all about the numbers. And then the final is intuitive, and that's about the big picture. So you need to really have communication where it is where they communicate from. So if they're a functional speaker, you need to go step by step by step by step in everything. And I think that's one really important clue of how you manage up is adopt their communication style so that you are connecting on that level. And from that communication style, I think you can have a better opportunity to make your case, whatever that might be. If you see there needs to be a change here, there needs to be a new program there, I think it's easier to make that case if you can come at them where they live, where they communicate from.
That's really helpful. And like, my largest hope in this whole kind of series is like tangible. So it's very tangible. So thank you for that. Um, the other question that I would ask, somebody brought up the phrase to me, sponsor. So not a mentor, but a sponsor. And so the next question is, what's the difference between a sponsor, a coach, a mentor, and does it matter? Do you have like framework, thought, advice around what we call these people in our lives?
Yeah, I'm not sure it does matter. When I think of sponsorships, I think of more of the programs for people with addictions and for people that it's a more intense relationship because you're helping someone stay on a path that they've entered on. And so that's what I really think of a sponsor kind of role versus a mentor kind of role is more of a conversation with another person about, how have you dealt with this? How have you dealt with that? It's more of a focus on, your professional growth and development versus you've entered a place where you're dealing with something and you've got to have someone really guide you through it that you have a particular closeness with.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing is you just know what you need in life. Do I have I made a decision to stop a behavior that's really detrimental to me? Then I probably need someone who is in a kind of sponsor role. Do I need someone who just can once in a while give me some good advice and can help me look at strategies and can just have good conversations? That's probably more of a mentoring relationship. So I kind of look at those in that kind of world, that kind of terminology.
I think that's helpful. I think there's like not a more commonly used and less defined or understood word than mentorship, I think. And I
Yeah.
think it's been interesting in these conversations to hear people say, well, I don't have a formal mentor. I just have all these people I ask all of these questions to,
Yeah.
which is good. But like, I think also without kind of having a defining the relationship conversation, you also might not be getting all that you could be getting out of that relationship.
Yeah,
And so
that's
I,
such a good point. That's a really good point, Bethany. I really think you really do have to have some expectations going in about what are you hoping to glean from this particular relationship.
so if somebody were in that position where they've got these people they ask questions of, but they aren't in a defined relationship, do you have advice on getting from point A to point B? How do we go from I have this person I call sometimes like, yeah, this is a mentor.
Yeah, I think, isn't it funny though? I think there's probably been mentors in my life that probably never realized they were my mentors. You know what I mean? Because they were the people that I had one woman when I was working at the University of Northern Colorado who was beyond a doubt a mentor to me. And she was just brilliant and wise and smart and just gave me great advice. And I bet she to this day didn't realize that was a mentoring relationship because it's kind of a component of it's a friendship, right?
Yep.
That's kind of some of it too. And so if you're looking for something more formal, you might want to have that conversation. I really want someone I want to meet with once a month and have lunch with and, bring some ideas of things that I really need to discuss. That's a more formalized relationship than a lot of mentors in our lives who we just will pick up the phone and they're always going to answer.
Yep. Yes, and we are grateful for those people.
Absolutely.
So you have a pretty established institutional memory in the higher education space. What responsibility comes with having that kind of perspective?
That's a great question. I really think there's a point in time, I'm in my 60s now, and there's a point in time where you realize your role changes and you're thinking more about how do I leave something much better than I found it? How do I contribute in a way that's really meaningful and important? And so I do think when you spend a lot of time in a system and you realize there's never entirely green grass wherever you exist. There just isn't. And you realize all institutions have their flaws, but then you start to shift that perspective into more of, but how can the world get a little better? And how can we make it a little bit better? I think there's just a wisdom when you have that kind of institutional knowledge that you start realizing it's never going to be perfect, but we can make it better, but we can improve it.
This has been like my hill to die on lately is like um there are no solutions, there's only trade-offs. And if like so winning 80% of something is a really good grade. like just it is an objectively good score. But I think oftentimes we leave those conversations or meetings feeling like I didn't quite get it. And I think we have to look at that differently.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's really, really important. And I think when you leave something and you don't really get it, or they didn't really get you, you got to be okay with that too. You got to be okay with that might not be the hill I'm going to die on today. I worked with some colleagues who I absolutely adored who were in more the advocacy kind of work. And what I love about them is they see their purpose so very clearly. But a lot of times I had some colleagues in that world who were just going to die on every mountain. And when you die on every mountain, you lose your ability to really win one battle
Yeah.
because it's always a mountain I'm dying on. It's always the same thing. And you lose you almost lose your power in that situation to really be able to move the ball forward.
And I think that is it's perspective, right? Like this is perspective in real life. There's always a hill to die on. That doesn't mean you should always
Yeah,
die on that hill. There will be another
that's
hill,
exactly
and it
right.
and it might be a bigger hill also. Like I think that's the other thing, is that the terrain is not known. Yeah.
Well, and I think the hard thing is at various points in your career is to know, is this the big mountain or not? And to be able to step back and really take a breath and evaluate that because I think we get caught up in things where it's like, no, this is it, this is it, this is it. And then you look back on it and go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have spent my time on that hill. And that's, I think, really hard to evaluate in organizations. I had a really wonderful colleague that I supervised, and she had a fit over parking, paying for parking at the institution, and just took it all the way up the ladder. And finally, I said to her, "I'm like, you are dying on the wrong hill here. That's not. It just looks like it's petty at a certain point in time." And I think that's just wisdom. You have to have some wisdom and look and really evaluate, is it worth it to me, or am I just, in the long run, I'm going to lose not only the fight, but I'm going to lose some of my capital that I've built up for how I can interact in this system.
And I think that's so wise, just to understand that, like, I had a conversation this morning with somebody that was very similar to this. Like, I don't enjoy the politics of higher education. Higher education is innately political. Anytime you're dealing with power and resources, it is a political environment. And that doesn't mean you have to enjoy it. It doesn't mean you can't wish it were different. But the reality is, we have to operate in the environments where we do our work.
That's a really great point. One of my favorite authors is Meg Wheatley, and she talks about creating islands of sanity in organizations. And I think that is so true. I think people in leadership roles, you create that island of sanity, and you might have craziness all around you, but you are able to, in that island of sanity, move initiatives forward, make the world a little better place. In my case, it was always about make the world better for students, that we had a place that they could go and really get the kind of advice and help and assistance they needed. I think we all have that obligation to say, okay, the world might be spinning around me and it might be absolutely insane, but not in this world. Not in this world. I'm going to keep it well and good.
And I think that's what the work of like retention and persistence looks like, is like I'm biased to the nature of higher ed and nonprofit work. I'm sure these things exist in other spaces though, where like, who are the people who you can take a walk with, get a cup of coffee with, go grab lunch with, call on the phone and be like, we're grounding. Like right now, I need you to remind me that like this is my island of sanity. Like it's going to be okay. And then how do you just kind of resume after that space?
Uh, I was at one institution running a grant program, which I absolutely love because these were federal grants and they were all over the country. And so there was a big community all over the country. So you knew that that existed, but I had 4 colleagues in that office who were so cued into purpose, were so centered on purpose, that that was the only thing that mattered, was everything's weighed against the purpose that we're there for. And if you have that kind of experience, it's so different than what the typical day at work could be like.
Yes. 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 Yes, that's important. I say a lot that, I'm wholly committed to the work of higher education because I think it's the largest and most efficient tool for large scale societal transformation. Like that's what, and so that might look like writing an email. That might look like evaluating an annual giving strategy. It might look like a student event, but there's something that comes before that. And so even when the letter isn't the way I want it to be, or I'm frustrated with the realities of time and space, I know why I'm here.
Yeah, and I think it's that is the biggest thing is I am a big person on purpose statements. I think purpose statements are really powerful, and I've always been clear that mine was to help the transformation of individuals. That's always been my purpose statement. That's always what I've done in my career. And if you can keep your eye on that ball, it makes a big difference when, you feel like it's crazy around you. You're very clear on why you're there and what you want to contribute.
Well, and I think if I'm gonna, having not read Meg Wheatley, if I'm gonna kind of expand that illustration, like what we're talking about in this purpose statement space is like the current. Like this might be happening up here, but like we have to live or be grounded here, and that makes your day a lot better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think so much of her work, when she talks about creating islands of sanity, is all about purpose, values, and honoring those on a constant occasion. And, we all have worked in organizations that have the value statements, but how many really live them every day? Every day. Because that's the tough part. I've done a lot of work where I go into organizations and help them develop their purpose statement and develop their value set and all that. And when I walk out the door, I'm like, I did the easy part with you. Now it's the hard part. Now it's every day weighing how you spend money, how you make decisions on programming, how you make decisions across the board based on that purpose in those value statements. And that gets a lot tougher. But that's why there are some organizations that are absolutely great, is they do live those values and they do have that purpose, and it's clear.
One of my favorite things to say in that context is if you have to Google your beliefs, they're not beliefs. Because I know what I believe. I could at a moment's notice tell you the things that are of utmost importance to me and my work. And so when you're like, yeah, we know what our beliefs are. No, you don't. No, you don't.
I actually had one boss that we went through. I was leading it on purpose and values. And she decided, after we had, everyone was divided into teams, everyone came out, had a set of questions. They went through the questions about what we want to be, who we want to honor, those kinds of things. And she just came in and she got on the internet and Googled values, picked a few, came in and said, this is where we're going. And you're like, that is not how you do this. It's just not. But people do think, like you said, I'm going to Google my beliefs.
This is literally my personal horror story. Like I'm so horrified. Um, in that space, when you're having those conversations with teams or leaders or organizations, what do you think is, or what has been in your experience, one of the largest hurdles in defining those values? And I think I'm really looking for like conversationally. Is it that there's a misalignment? Is it a lack of real understanding of the work? Like what is kind of the consistent through line of here's where people struggle?
To be honest, Bethany, I don't think they struggle. I think what they do is they get caught in wordsmithing.
Mm,
They get caught in, oh, there should be a there instead of a the, or it's like, this is supposed to be just meaningful to you. And granted, words are powerful and you really need to think about them, but then they start spinning on stuff that they shouldn't be spinning on. And it's what you really should be spinning on is, how are you going to live these?
hmm
Are there examples in your current environment that say, for example, you have respect as a team? Are there examples in your current environment that say you act with integrity as a team? That's what because your values are already there. There's already part of your culture. You're just trying to define a word to fit that culture that exists.
Yeah.
And that's the important part of it.
That's again tangible and insightful, and I appreciate that. So, in your experience, what separates a leader who is hoarding wisdom versus one who multiplies it?
Hmm. I think really it comes down to benevolence. Why are they the wisdom that they have and the wisdom that they're sharing? Is it to look good, or is it for the good of the team? And is it for the good of the organization and situation? I think that's when the people who are benevolent, those are the people that we all love and respect. Those are the leaders, not the ones in it for themselves. Those are folks we don't tend to follow, even though they might be at the top of the organization, we're not following them. But the people that are leading from a heart of, I'm here for the purpose I serve, and I'm here for the people that are part of this organization. That's where, the wisdom comes in.
So, I'm in a strategic planning course this semester, and
Oh,
yeah, it's incredible. It is my favorite thing in the whole world. Um, we're talking a lot about culture right now, and
Mhm.
it's interesting, those of us who have worked in higher ed for a considerable amount of time versus those who are taking this coursework. And there's a very clear difference in assessment of the materials based on whether this is the space you spend a lot of time in or a space that is new to you. And so when you think about a culture where a leader is maybe in it for themselves and is not being followed by their team, what are the red flags of that? How do you assess or diagnose a culture where that is a leadership reality?
Some of it is just you can feel it. I've walked on campuses where you can just feel the level of stress. You can feel the level of unhappiness. You can feel the level of um, just disgust with the work environment. You really do feel it. Um, I always tell people if you're interviewing for jobs, I interviewed for a job once, and the first question was, how do you deal with conflict? Well, that's a red flag. Okay, I don't want to work here. Uh, then there was another interview I had where I asked them, what's the best part of working here? And there was dead silence. That's a red flag. I mean, there's some of these
Yeah.
really obvious red flags that you can see, but I think you just have to turn on your intuition and feel it too.
Hmm.
When the leader of the institution walks in the room, what's the reaction to that? Is it, do they kind of ignore that person like, oh, yeah? Or is there a warmth about it? I'm working for one institution that had a really, really warm leader. That person knew everyone in the room, took the effort to know everyone in the room, was very benevolent in approach. And then that person retired, and another person came in who was all analytical,
Hmm.
and they don't get that person. And that's a matter too of if you're hiring a leader, you got to think about the culture. Are you wanting to shift it dramatically? And so you're going to hire someone who really doesn't fit in it, but you're hoping they're going to spearhead it?
Hmm.
Or do you want to hire someone that takes up the mantle that was created because the environment's good, but also knows how to tweak things? I think that's a really important part of um, culture is, who is the leader and are they a fit for what
Yeah.
you want them to, where they're going to be.
I think it's such an interesting conversation because culture is, as we know, so real and so felt that I think sometimes it's hard to like conceptualize or build a framework around who's the right candidate for this role, or what is our culture and are we comfortable with it? Like I think sometimes it's hard to define, and so there's this like, so we're just, culture's good. Let's move on to metrics or numbers or goals and initiatives because we can't really get our hands around culture.
Well, I think that's so true. And I think people don't understand that it's going to exist whether you guide it or not. And for example, the one institution I'm working with has had a massive organizational change. And what they're not seeming to get yet is that massive change created culture that was evolving, right? But you have the opportunity to guide that culture and create it in the way that is best suited for your mission. But you don't see that cultivation of it. And I think there's too many of us in leadership roles that are like the culture is going to exist no matter what. You have an opportunity to shape it and move it in a direction that's the most beneficial for your purpose.
And I think I wish that people were able to better understand that culture, just because we can't point to it in the room, doesn't mean that it isn't a huge indicator on your metrics of success in retention, in internal advancement, in even literal the metric success of your ability to do your job. I think it's a bigger player in the game than people want to talk about.
Well, absolutely. Although people really their experience on their team is what determines if they're going to stay or not. But if you have a thriving, positive, productive culture, people are going to want to work for you. And, you're going to get talent where you've probably seen this. I've noticed in certain higher ed systems, talent doesn't last.
Hmm.
Talent leaves the building because they're like, I can't contribute to the level I want to here. And, we've got to be thoughtful about that if we create cultures that are really positive and productive overall in the system, we're going to have the most talented people working for us. And that's what you want.
This is also not on my list of questions, but we're going to go here. One of the things that I've had some questions about is you hear all these things about generations. You can't manage this generation. They don't want to work. They can't read. uh, whatever heinous thing you want to say about a generalized group of people to excuse whatever we're excusing. Um, and I think I have a number of friends where we're regularly talking about, I just wish they knew how much I want to do my job. Like, just let me do my job. Um, and so I think a question I would ask is, how do we help leaders understand the differences in generations or in genders or in work ideology? Like, just working isn't enough anymore. I want to contribute meaningfully, or I want to know I'm building something real and lasting. What insight or advice would you add in that space?
Oh, I think the research on generations is fascinating. It's such a great, I was going to do my dissertation on it because I absolutely love that field. I think it's really fascinating. I think the big thing with generational differences is who's ever last into the workforce is it. We don't get them. We don't understand them. They don't act the way we want. It happens. I'm a baby boomer. I'm a cusper, really. I'm kind of Generation X baby boomer. But I managed all Generation X, and I was always like, I don't get them. I don't understand them. They're just different than me. And then I realized, well, yeah, because the influence of what you have culturally around you, the influence of various events that happened shape who you are. And that's where you get differences with generations. And, when I was doing my work at Colorado State with training supervisors, everyone was complaining about millennials. We hate millennials. We don't get them. And it's just like, you're going to have it, now you have it with Generation Z. You're going to have it with whatever they call the next generation. I think it's beta, if I remember right. You're just not going to, because we're all born in a period of time that shapes who we are. And you got to kind of appreciate that and understand it. And I think people just need to take a class in generational differences. It's a fun class. It's great to have the opportunity to explore what the characteristics are of different generations. And so, but just realize when the next generation gets in the workforce, which they're coming, we're not going to get them. We're just going to go, oh, we're just going to blame you. You just don't have discipline or whatever.
And you used a word that I think is important, and it's just appreciation. Like, every single person that you've chosen to, like, if you've chosen to hire this person, they've passed your rubric to be present.
Exactly.
And so by merit of that reality, they're on your team. So then how do you appreciate who that person is that is different than you, which is a good thing? I'm a big fan of that. I think our team should be diverse.
Absolutely.
But I think that, if you enter that conversation with appreciation versus some bias against what you don't have, it would go a long way.
Absolutely. There's a great book out there called Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And it's about Lincoln's cabinet. Well, it's about Lincoln. But Lincoln was, when he was elected president, he actually picked in his cabinet many people who ran against him for the Republican nomination, excuse me. And, that is such a great leadership trait. And I think we see it on a national level in some places, that people are picking individuals who have a totally different perspective and how valuable that is at the table. And every bit of research says if you can have diversity at your table, people with different lenses, with different experiences, with different backgrounds, you're going to get a better product because you're going to problem solve in more powerful ways.
And all of that, and if your work is engaging with multiple people, it
Absolutely.
just makes more sense. Now, if your work is not external in any way, that might not be a relevant thing, but if our job is to connect across space and time with various affinity groups, not doing that, not building your table in that way is a huge deficit.
Absolutely. You're selling your organization and your opportunity short
Hmm.
by not doing that. And to have people that look at the world very different. I've always used the Clifton Strengths Finder to get some insight to how people work and how people click. And we did it at CSU. We had over 2,000 people taking the assessment. And when I went in and did a little bit of a study on what were the most frequent themes that people had at the institution, I was a little saddened because I found that there was a large majority who had learner, because who doesn't want to work in higher ed if you like to learn? Not a stretch, but some of the themes, the influencing themes, were way down on the scale. And I always had conversations with people who had those influencing kind of themes about, do you feel like the unicorn in the system? Do you feel like people don't get you? Do you feel like people don't see where you're coming from? And that was widely the case in people. And that's the challenge, is how do you make sure you're having a diversity in the workplace that really gives you the richness of what you really need in so many different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a if we could solve that, we would
Yeah,
have
if we
solved a
could.
lot of things.
That's absolutely true.
So, there's a difference between giving advice and cultivating discernment. How do you help someone learn how to think or how to process, not just what to do?
Hmm. I think it's a little bit of a bunch of things. I think one of it is just role modeling. I think that's part of it, is that, you have role models around you that show you kind of that path of how to get that done. I think that's a big one. I am a big fan of professional development to help you grow and develop, and to help you learn that kind of a trait, I think is really important too. So I think it's a combination of seeing people that behave in the way that you need to behave in, and taking the banner up yourself to learn new strategies for how you're going to work in the workplace.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. One of the things we talk about a lot, or I hear a lot from a younger contingent, is fear of vulnerability, fear of a lack of safety or psychological safety, or am I giving too much to this person? How do you kind of waylay those fears?
It's so funny because I think psychological safety is really akin to trust. And I just taught a workshop on it yesterday. And we all got to realize that our very first developmental step as human beings is to trust our caregivers. And that starts shaping how we view trust and how we view our ability to take risks with others and in different kinds of activities. And so you start with your caregivers and you go all the way through life with all these relationships and all these experiences that feed into your belief of how you feel safe and how you can trust people. And so we have two ends of the continuum in the workplace. We have people that give trust absolutely freely, and they believe everyone and everything that comes their way. And we have people that don't believe anyone and don't believe anything that comes their way. So we have that big contingency, and then people all over the place. And so when it comes to psychological safety in the workplace and it comes to trust in the workplace, you've got to understand where you fall on that continuum. And it's particularly important as a leader. If you are a supervisor of people and they have to earn your trust, they need to know and understand that about you, that there's benchmarks you need to hit in order for you to have the autonomy you want, or for you to be able to go on with projects. Or if you're the kind of person that trusts freely, they need to know that about you, because you might not say stop as quickly as you need to. And so I think it comes down to understanding where you see trust in that continuum and being able to honor that in the workplace, because there is no right or wrong. If a person has to earn trust from others to be successful, that you just need to know that about yourself. It's not a character flaw. It's you were shaped that way by all the people in your life, and you've got to honor them.
And there might not be a good answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How do you help someone, a new professional, a new leader, identify where they fall on that spectrum?
I have a little quick assessment I use. It's a quick questionnaire that helps people think about the issues that make you trust someone or not trust someone. And so that's part of it. But there's a model too that's out there that I really like. Trust, when you think about trust, it's three variables. Ability in the workplace in particular. Ability is the first one. So is the person competent? Do they have their skills? Do they have the knowledge to do their job? The second is integrity. Are they transparent? Are they honest? Are they trustworthy? Do they walk the walk and talk the talk? Those kinds of things, integrity. And then the final is benevolence. What are they in it for? So if you were to think about people in your life, Bethany, that you trust completely in the workplace, my guess is they have all three of those things.
Yeah.
And anytime someone comes to me in a coaching situation and says, I just don't like my boss, I'm struggling, I go through those three things. What is it? Are they able to do their job? Do they have integrity? Or are they in it for themselves or in it for the greater good? And that's how you can really start that conversation on, should I trust this person or not? The propensity to trust part of it is you probably realize that. You've just never thought about it. When I think about the people in my life, what was my experience like with them? Were there people that violated my trust over and over again? That's going to shape you. If you were in a situation in the workplace where you had a boss that just tortured you, that was a bully, you're probably going to bring that into the next work environment and probably be a little bit more leery of your interactions with your next boss. And so really about propensity, you really just need to reflect on your life and say, I'm probably a little leery in this situation, and it might be different in your personal versus your professional. If you had some rough relationships in your personal life, that might be where you're less willing to take risks. If you had more difficulty in your professional life, that might be where you're not going to take some risks. So it really is reflection.
It's so helpful. It's so incredibly helpful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. When you think about, and again, a lot of our context here is higher ed or higher ed adjacent, but this exists in all spaces. Mentorship often exists inside systems of hierarchy. How do you help someone navigate or even understand what that looks like?
Yeah, and doesn't that come down to privilege?
Oh,
Doesn't it really, who's at the table, and because they're at the table, they have the opportunity to be around people with power who can serve as mentors, versus people throughout the system that usually don't have that opportunity as much. And so it really comes down to that. Boy, I don't know. That's a really tough one. I think in a lot of systems, I know I've seen formal mentoring programs in institutions. And I don't know, to be honest, if they work as well as you just picking your mentor, because people who don't know you really well probably pair you up with someone that, based on their observations of you, not the reality maybe of who you really are. And so I think, if you're really interested in mentoring, you need to pursue that on your own versus some of the formal systems, because I think they can be not understand the authentic you and not understand what you might need.
So this gets to something that is however many episodes incoming, where I love mentoring, I love mentorship, I love professional development. I think these things are important to culture, but I very much agree that most of the people I've talked to are not in formal programs. And so as someone who is advised in many spaces, if somebody were to say, we are XYZ organization, we think this would help our culture, this is important to us, these are our values or beliefs, but we can agree that maybe this large scale match mentoring program isn't the best, what would you advise them to look into or ask questions about or implement for their organization?
I would really honestly think about informal gatherings, more informal gatherings where you have a group of people that have the opportunity to just connect with each other. And if you have some more informal gatherings, then that mentorship could evolve from there. You could, have a cup of coffee with someone at one of these informal gatherings and find out, wow, this person is someone I could really benefit from hearing more about their experiences in life and being able to share my experiences and see, what their thoughts on things are. I think it's more of, giving people exposure to each other in systems, have those, if you're having a large division meeting, have some social time in the beginning where you get to connect with people you didn't get to connect with normally, and, find some folks who you think could be that kind of role for you. I think those things are better.
I love how easy that is. This is not rocket science. Like, this is
No.
intentional time. Would you advise even prefacing? Is there a preface like, we think this is important, or is even that a little bit more prescribed than you would recommend?
No, I think you're right, Bethany. I think you say, we want to give people the opportunity to connect with each other and the opportunity to learn from each other. So we're going to have some of these informal gatherings and come, and there's no agenda, or maybe, there's an article you pull and you have everyone read it. You wander around and talk to people about your perceptions of that article or that book. I think it can be a lot simpler than we make it.
Yeah. It's nice to hear someone with more credibility than me say that. So
I think
thank
you have
you for
lots of
saying that.
credibility. I think you have lots of credibility. No doubt in my mind.
One of the questions I get a lot is, and I think this does come back to the whole spectrum of trust, is there is a fear. And I will say there it is generational of, someone has more influence or more control than I'm ready to give, or even someone's going to tell me what to do. And what if I don't want to do it? And how do I navigate those conversations? And so I think the first question I'd ask in that space is, what is something a mentor should never do? Like, what is the red
Mhm.
flag? Like, if this happens, this might not be right.
That's a great question. I think it's exactly what you outlined, telling you what to do. You probably have enough people in your life to tell you what to do. You don't need another one. And so I think it's a person who really listens, who, can brainstorm options with you, who, if you say, what are those options would you go with, are honest with you about it, but they're not trying to change you, make you into them, whatever, tell you what to do. Those things you don't need in a mentor.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. You've spoken and written about hope and resilience throughout your career. How does a mentor help in those spaces?
Well, hope gets a bad rap. Hope is truly about your ideas and energy for the future. Hope is a strategy. Hope isn't wishy-washy. It's action-oriented. It's you see a goal and you act on it to fruition. And so I think the big thing with hope is to have future conversations. I think too often we're in the past and we what the research I saw is there's a few of us that live in the past. There's most of us live in the present, and very few of us live in the future. Well, having a future framework gives you hope. That's what hope is. It's the essence of hope is that I see an opportunity in front of me. a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever your comfort level is, and I'm moving towards it. And that's all about hope. And then resilience is all about letting go. I would bet most people I talk to are carrying around something from the workplace that happened to them 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They'd have on their tombstone that I hate my former manager, instead of letting go of it. We have got to learn through resilience strategies how to let go of things, and learn from them and move forward. Because if we don't do that, it's Groundhog Day. And I think I've had many Groundhog Days in my career where I made the same mistakes over and over and over again, and did not stop to say, that is not the path, and you need to wake up. That is not the behavior. That is not the path. And so I really think those two, I want to make sure I make this point. Hope and resilience are attributes you can build. We are not born with hope and resilience. We develop them. And so if you feel like you're not future oriented enough, that you're not embracing and excited about the future that could be ahead of you, you can work on that. And if you feel like you're not resilient enough and you really have a hard time with challenges and you get off track and you can't get back on, you can work on that. And so that's the beauty of being human, is all these attributes that we have, most of them are things that we can work on and make better, and be able to utilize them in ways that help us grow and develop.
Thank you. There is literally nothing. There's nothing. Thank you. There's nothing to say other than thank you. I think like even just the function of like, you're not deficient. This can grow. Like you can grow this in yourself.
Yes.
Is a like revolutionary framework for, I was once told, and I do think I believe this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. You can't call someone resilient. Like when you look at someone's hardship and the way they've managed to stand back up, I have a hard time with that. Like I think sometimes where you were stronger because of the trials we, survived. Like, well, what were my options? And so I think sometimes that conversation can even be hard to enter into from an outside perspective. And the way you've kind of framed this is like, this is a trait that we can grow. This is not simply something you've endured.
Well, the other part of it with resilience, I actually taught this 2 days ago, so that it's fresh in my mind. The other thing about resilience is we tend to think of it as these big catastrophic events in our life, like COVID. Mm-hmm. Resilience is not that. Resilience is about having a mind and a framework that whatever comes your way, you're going to be able to learn from it and let go of it. That's what resilience is. So it's something like your coworker says something that doesn't settle right with you, that you think about it, you feel what you feel about it, you do something to kind of release that, and then you think about, what did I learn from it? Mm-hmm. And that's what it really is. Resilience is a daily activity. It isn't like when the sky is falling and you are in the middle of it. It's a daily ritual that you do.
I think there's no gesture I've probably made more in a managerial space than like, you got to have an open hand. Like things come and they go, and how we're like, the pain comes from when we're holding it like this, not just saying, we'll see. And every opportunity, as long as we are, and I think this comes back to something you already said, right? Like future focused. Where am I going? This is an opportunity for me to learn. Like I do not have to hold this meeting. I don't have to hold this season. I don't have to hold this comment or remark. It just is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And some things, that's the rationalization going to be, okay, it was just said, and I'm gonna not take it as to hard as I used to take it. I'm gonna think about it and release it, and maybe I need to go back to that person or whatever. But nothing is. I think when those two variables, hope and resilience, are the things that we really have to focus on in our lives. How can we create a future that is what we want it to be? And how do we manage the day-to-day stresses, strains, difficulties that are all around us and move forward from them?
I want to have a little bit of a conversation similar to the hope and resilience conversation around that's my dog. Hello, Maverick. Around the framework of trust. And where does trust, how do we grow that? Is that a thing that, I would like your thoughts on the concept of trust.
Yeah, trust does grow, and it's based on a few things. You got to realize with trust, it's a two-way relationship, right? You both need to be in it to build that foundation of trust. The second thing, it's both cognitive and emotional. You might meet someone and right away your red flags go up, which is the emotional part. Right away you're like, I don't think so. And so that's the emotional part. But the cognitive part is you make that decision that, okay, there's risk in this relationship, but I'm going to pursue it anyway. So that's a component of it. The other thing with trust is to just realize that it is a growth opportunity, that you might have no trust. You might have a baseline of trust. You might have an incredible level of trust, but it's always an opportunity to grow it based on the relationship and the risks. And that's the final part of it. It is a risk to trust absolutely anyone. And you have to decide if that risk is worth it. And there's various levels. There are a lot of people that their trust might look different in the workplace versus personal. Maybe it's like, I'm not willing to take that risk in my personal life, but I'm fine in my work life, or vice versa. And so you've got to realize anytime you trust, there's a risk element, and you got to be okay with that.
And I think even just like that understanding is important. We're not saying this is I think there is as important as a lot of these things is assessing and understanding your appetite for risk.
Absolutely.
And my general rebuttal to that is there is risk in all the things that we do. And that's important to acknowledge also.
Absolutely. And I think the other part of it is what great thing ever happens without risk? Nothing. You're risking in every stage of your life, and you've got to just decide you got to be okay with it, and you got to take it on, because that's how you're able to really achieve things and contribute things that you never thought were possible. You take a risk.
That's the tweet. We are very much at time, but I have one kind of closing question I'd love to ask you, which is for anyone who's feeling like I should have a mentor, or I should have a mentee, I should be more involved or engaged in this space, what advice would you give them, either the mentee or the mentor, both, for anyone kind of standing here saying, I think I need to be doing more here?
Yeah, I think you just put yourself out there. I think you just make an effort to connect with people, where by nature of being human beings, we love connection. And you put yourself out there and you connect with people. And if you meet someone that you're really connecting with and you really can learn from, you invite them to coffee. You say, hey, you're someone I really think I can learn a great deal from. Can we get together for coffee once a month? Or if you see someone that could use a mentor, you'd say, hey, would you like me to share a little bit about my world and how I got to where I am? I'd love to just meet for coffee once in a while. Just take that risk.
This was profoundly insightful. A wonderful, wonderful conversation. It was great to see your face. Thank you so much for all of the deeply tangible things that you shared.
Well, couldn't have a better facilitator for this. You're fabulous at this. Keep doing it. It's your gift.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate you. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. And I look forward to chatting again soon.
You take care of you. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.